true that, you know, in terms of our ability to imagine things beyond experience, I don't think we have. That's why people don't believe predictions. You know, why didn't anyone believe that there was going to be a pandemic? It's because we've never experienced one. Why don't people believe that it's going to be climate change is going to be catastrophic? It's because they've never experienced it. So people can't imagine it. So there's a limit. There's a cognitive frailty in human beings. Anyway, that's where I'm at. I'll shut up now.
And this kind of reminds me of the notion of limit in Wittgenstein's work, where he mentions that the once, what's the famous quote? The limit of my language is the limit of my thinking, or something similar. But anyways, it means like you can almost only articulate things that you can think of, but at the same time, this doesn't mean that what's nonsense or what doesn't refer to a certain entity is nonsense. So it's kind of like, I think, highlights the fact that even if there are things that we didn't think about, or we didn't articulate, or we didn't write about, we are still kind of bound in the possibilities of actions that could happen, that could take place. And the fact that we don't have the experience yet doesn't mean that they can't exist. But at the same time, there's the paradox of, they can only be experienced while they are actually possible.
Yeah.
And I think too, you can bring in this idea, because what you were mentioning about the living world is also about handling metaphors and how humans use metaphors to make sense of the very chaotic reality that is their physical lives. And so I know there's a lot of active work actually changing the metaphor, which then reflects in language use, right? Instead of using, I can buy natural resources, we talk about them with other words that reflect other underlying metaphors. And thinking about the living world as well, we know that humans have a very hard time, possibly because of these embodied experiences, that it's very difficult for humans to conceptualize and understand timescales that are much larger than our own. And so this is one of, I've read some places that, this is one of the problems with climate change and evolution, is because the scales are so big that humans actually can't understand them, because they're just not anything that we can do. And so thinking about how language can either help that process or hinder that process, and how, or other types of art forms and other ways of experiencing and thinking and being might help contribute to kind of changing the way that we engage with the natural world, possibly. But language is kind of that window into these mental processes.
I'm very much of the view that if we understand the limitations of our abilities as a species, then people, artists, communicators, professional communicators, policymakers, everybody can just work with the reality, of what we're capable of imagining. And for me, that's it. It's like, it doesn't matter that we've got these fundamental cognitive flaws. We just need to understand them and accept them. Do you know what I mean? Because the advertising and consumer industry understands them, really, they understand them and exploit them mercilessly, but for some reason the progressive left seems extremely reluctant to accept the idea that we are extremely limited in our imagination. They just cannot accept it, because it goes against everything to do with, the humanities, the fucking glory of the human, There's a real tension between the humanities and the glory of the artist and the glory of the human imagination, and the reality, which is that we're all just potatoes. You can't imagine what a lemon tastes like unless we've had one.